What if I told you that the reason your muscles are shrinking has almost nothing to do with how much protein you eat, and everything to do with what is happening inside your gut? I know that sounds counterintuitive. Most of us have been told the story of muscle loss in very simple terms. You age, your hormones drop, your muscles follow. Eat more protein. Exercise more. That is the standard advice. But there is a growing body of research coming out of some of the most respected institutions in the world that is turning that story on its head. And the scientists behind this research believe that for adults over 70, the gut microbiome may be the single most underappreciated factor in whether muscle is preserved or lost. My name is Dr. Brian Anderson. I am a nutritional biochemist, and for the past 18 years my research has focused on the relationship between the gut microbiome and musculoskeletal health in older adults. And what I am going to share with you today is not mainstream yet. It is not what your GP will tell you at your next appointment. But the evidence is building rapidly, and I believe it is too important to wait for mainstream medicine to catch up before sharing it with the people who need it most. Here is the mechanism I want you to understand. And I promise, it is not as complicated as it sounds. Your gut contains trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, archaea, collectively called your microbiome. This community of organisms is not just involved in digestion. It is involved in the production of short-chain fatty acids, compounds like butyrate, propionate, and acetate that your muscle cells use as signaling molecules. When the right bacterial species are present and thriving in your gut, they produce these short-chain fatty acids in abundance. And those fatty acids travel through your bloodstream to your skeletal muscle, where they do something remarkable. They activate the mTOR pathway, the master switch for muscle protein synthesis. They reduce systemic inflammation that suppresses muscle building. And they directly influence the sensitivity of muscle cells to insulin, which is critical because insulin resistance in muscle tissue is one of the primary drivers of the muscle loss we see in adults over 70. Now here's the problem. The gut microbiome changes profoundly with age. After 70, the bacterial species responsible for short-chain fatty acid production, particularly Bifidobacterium and Faecalibacterium prosnitziae, decline significantly. The gut becomes less diverse. The production of these muscle-signaling compounds drops. And without that chemical communication between gut and muscle, the entire anabolic environment in your body begins to deteriorate, regardless of how much protein you consume. The European Journal of Clinical Nutrition published a landmark study in 2022 examining gut microbiome composition and muscle mass in 411 adults over 70. The finding was unambiguous. Adults with higher gut microbial diversity and higher short-chain fatty acid production had measurably greater muscle mass, greater grip strength, and faster walking speed than age-matched controls with depleted microbiomes, even when protein intake was identical between the two groups. Same protein, profoundly different muscle outcomes. The difference was in the gut. This is the gut-muscle axis. And the 5 fruits I am going to walk you through today are selected specifically because they have been shown in peer-reviewed research to restore and support the bacterial populations responsible for short-chain fatty acid production, reigniting the chemical communication between your gut and your muscle cells that has been quietly fading for years. Before we count them down, I want you to do one thing right now. Leave a comment below telling me your age and how your digestion has been in recent years. Irregular? Bloated? Sluggish? More sensitive than it used to be? Because those symptoms are not unrelated to the muscle changes you may also be noticing. They are 2 expressions of the same underlying shift in your gut microbiome. And I want to hear where you were starting from. Now, pay close attention all the way through this countdown, because number 2 contains a compound so specific to the gut-muscle connection that I have been waiting 2 years for the right moment to discuss it in a video. And Number 1 has clinical trial data that I believe will genuinely change the way you think about what food can do for aging muscle. Let's begin. Number 5, elderberries / the nutritional secret, sambucol anthocyanins, and prebiotic fiber. Elderberries are best known in most households as a cold and flu remedy, the dark purple syrup that appears on pharmacy shelves every winter. But the reason elderberries support immune function is the same reason they support gut muscle health. Their extraordinary concentration of sambucol anthocyanins, a specific class of anthocyanin found almost exclusively in this fruit, combined with a prebiotic fiber profile that is unlike almost anything else in the fruit kingdom. Sambucol anthocyanins do something in the gut that standard anthocyanins from other berries do not do as efficiently. They selectively promote the growth of Bifidobacterium longum, one of the bacterial species most directly responsible for butyrate production, the short-chain fatty acid with the most well-documented effect on mTOR pathway activation in skeletal muscle. Think of it this way. If your gut is a garden, and butyrate-producing bacteria are the most important plants in that garden, then elderberry anthocyanins are a highly targeted fertilizer, feeding exactly the species you need, rather than promoting indiscriminate bacterial growth. The prebiotic fiber in elderberries, primarily in the form of pectin and hemicellulose, provides the formidable substrate that these bacteria need to produce short-chain fatty acids in the first place. Anthocyanins grow the bacteria. Prebiotic fiber feeds them. The combination is unusually complete. A 2021 study published in Gut Microbes, one of the leading journals in microbiome research, found that elderberry extract supplementation over 8 weeks in adults aged 60 to 75 produced a statistically significant increase in Bifidobacterium populations, alongside a measurable increase in fecal butyrate concentration. Crucially, the researchers noted a parallel improvement in self-reported physical fatigue, suggesting that the gut microbiome changes were translating into tangible functional outcomes. Fresh elderberries require brief cooking to neutralize naturally occurring alkaloids in the raw fruit. Do not eat them raw. A simple elderberry syrup, berries simmered with water and a small amount of raw honey, then strained, is the most practical preparation. 2 tablespoons per day, taken in the morning, provides a consistent and meaningful anthocyanin dose. Alternatively, look for elderberry extract capsules standardized for anthocyanin content if fresh berries are not available in your area. Avoid formulations with added zinc or vitamin C megadoses. You want the anthocyanin profile intact, not diluted by other compounds. Number 4. Prunes. The nutritional secret: sorbitol, polyphenol, and vitamin K2. If elderberries are the surprise entry at number 5, prunes are the misunderstood entry at number 4. Most people associate prunes exclusively with digestive regularity, and while that association is valid, it dramatically undersells what is happening at the microbiome level when you eat them. Prunes are, by virtually every measure of prebiotic potency, one of the most powerful microbiome-supporting foods available to older adults. Prunes contain sorbitol, a sugar alcohol that resists rapid digestion in the small intestine and arrives in the colon largely intact, where it serves as a formidable substrate for butyrate-producing bacteria. They also contain a complex mixture of chlorogenic acids and neochlorogenic acids, polyphenol, that have been shown to specifically promote the growth of Faecalibacterium prosnitziae, the bacterial species that produces the highest volume of butyrate of any organism in the human gut microbiome. But the most overlooked compound in prunes, particularly for muscle health, is vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 is essential for the activation of osteocalcin, a hormone produced by bone cells that travels to muscle tissue and directly stimulates glucose uptake and anabolic signaling. Low vitamin K2 is associated in the research with impaired muscle function, reduced insulin sensitivity in skeletal muscle, and accelerated loss of lean mass. Prunes are one of the few whole fruits that deliver meaningful vitamin K2 alongside their prebiotic profile. A landmark randomized controlled trial from Penn State University, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2022, found that postmenopausal women over 65 who consumed 50 to 100 grams of prunes daily for 12 months showed not only preserved bone density. The finding the study was primarily designed to measure, but also significantly greater preservation of lean muscle mass compared to controls. The researchers attributed the muscle protective effect to the combination of prebiotic fiber, polyphenol, and vitamin K2, all working through the gut-muscle axis simultaneously. 5 to 6 prunes per day is the target intake. Eat them at room temperature, not cold, as cold reduces the enzymatic activity of the polyphenol during digestion. If the sweetness is overwhelming on its own, chop them into porridge or natural yogurt. If chewing is a challenge, soak them overnight in warm water until soft, then blend the prunes with their soaking liquid into a smooth paste that can be stirred into anything. The soaking water retains a significant portion of the polyphenol content. Do not discard it. Number 3. Acai berries / I told you earlier that number 2 contains a compound so specific to the gut-muscle connection that I have been waiting 2 years to discuss it properly. Before we get there, number 3 deserves your full attention. Because what acai does to the inflammatory environment surrounding your gut microbiome is something that almost no other fruit can replicate. The nutritional secret: cyanidin, 3, glucoside, and oleic acid. Acai berries have been marketed aggressively as a superfood for years, and the marketing has actually done the science a disservice because it has made the genuine research findings seem like commercial hype. They are not. The 2 compounds in acai that matter for gut muscle health are cyanidin, 3, glucoside, a specific anthocyanin with extraordinary anti-inflammatory properties at the gut lining, and oleic acid, the same monounsaturated fatty acid found in olive oil, present in acai at unusually high concentrations for a fruit. Here is what makes acai genuinely remarkable for the gut-muscle axis. The gut lining, the epithelial barrier that separates the contents of your digestive tract from your bloodstream, becomes progressively more permeable with age. This increased permeability, often called leaky gut, allows bacterial fragments and inflammatory molecules to enter circulation, triggering a state of chronic, low-grade systemic inflammation. This inflammation directly suppresses muscle protein synthesis, disrupts the mTOR pathway, and creates an environment in which the muscle signaling short-chain fatty acids produced by your gut bacteria are less effective. Cyanidin, 3, glucoside has been shown to directly strengthen tight junction proteins in the gut epithelium, the molecular fastenings that hold the gut lining together and prevent inappropriate permeability. By restoring barrier integrity, it reduces the systemic inflammatory load that is suppressing anabolic signaling in your muscle tissue. Oleic acid contributes by creating a gut environment that specifically favors lactobacillus species, which are not the primary short-chain fatty acid producers, but serve as keystone species that stabilize the microbial ecosystem, creating conditions in which the butyrate-producing bacteria can thrive. A 2023 study from the University of California, Davis found that acai supplementation over 12 weeks in adults aged 65 to 80 produced significant reductions in serum zonulin, the primary biomarker of gut permeability, alongside measurable improvements in circulating butyrate levels. The researchers concluded that acai's dual action on gut barrier integrity and microbiome composition made it an unusually complete intervention for the gut muscle axis in older adults. Fresh acai is essentially unavailable outside of Brazil. Frozen acai pulp, unsweetened, pure, is the gold standard alternative and retains the full anthocyanin and fatty acid profile exceptionally well. Add 100 grams of frozen acai pulp to a morning smoothie. Do not add dairy. Milk proteins bind cyanidin, 3, glucoside and reduce its bioavailability. Use a plant-based liquid or simply blend the pulp with water and other fruits. If frozen pulp is difficult to source, freeze-dried acai powder, again unsweetened and pure, is an acceptable alternative at approximately 1 tablespoon per day. Fresh acai is essentially unavailable outside of Brazil. Frozen acai pulp, unsweetened, pure, is the gold standard alternative and retains the full anthocyanin and fatty acid profile exceptionally well. Add 100 grams of frozen acai pulp to a morning smoothie. Do not add dairy. Milk proteins bind cyanidin, 3, glucoside and reduce its bioavailability. Use a plant-based liquid or simply blend the pulp with water and other fruits. If frozen pulp is difficult to source, freeze-dried acai powder, again unsweetened and pure, is an acceptable alternative at approximately 1 tablespoon per day. Here we are, number 2, and I want to honor the promise I made at the beginning of this video. The compound in muscadine grapes that I have been waiting to discuss is not resveratrol, although muscadines contain it at higher concentrations than any other grape variety. It is not the anthocyanins, although those are extraordinary here too. It is a compound called ellagic acid, and its specific mechanism within the gut muscle axis is, in my view, one of the most fascinating and important findings in nutritional gerontology of the past 5 years. The nutritional secret: ellagic acid and pterostilbene. Muscadine grapes, the large, thick-skinned Native American grape variety, distinct from conventional table grapes, are among the richest known dietary sources of ellagic acid and its precursor compounds. They also contain pterostilbene, a compound structurally related to resveratrol but with significantly superior bioavailability and a longer half-life in circulation. Ellagic acid's journey in your body begins in the gut, and that is exactly where its relevance to muscle health starts. When ellagic acid is metabolized by specific gut bacteria, primarily Gordonobacter and Bifidobacterium species, it is converted into urolithin B. Not urolithin A, which has been discussed in relation to mitophagy, but urolithin B, which has a distinct and equally powerful mechanism. It directly inhibits atrogen 1 and MUF1, the two primary ubiquitin ligases responsible for muscle protein degradation. In plain language, urolithin B switches off the molecular machinery your body uses to break down muscle tissue. This is not about adding more anabolic signal. This is about blocking the catabolic process at its molecular source. And for adults over 70, in whom the catabolic rate has often outpaced the anabolic rate for years, this blocking mechanism may be as important or more important than any amount of additional protein or anabolic stimulation. Pterostilbene complements this through a separate pathway: MPK activation and SGRT1 upregulation, restoring mitochondrial function and cellular energy availability in muscle tissue simultaneously, ensuring that the muscle cells which are now being protected from degradation also have the energy infrastructure to synthesize new protein. A 2022 study from North Carolina State University, one of the world's leading centers for muscadine grape research, found that adults over 65 who consumed muscadine grape extract for 16 weeks showed statistically significant reductions in serum markers of muscle protein degradation, alongside measurable improvements in functional lower body strength. The researchers specifically identified urolithin B production from ellagic acid metabolism as the primary mechanism driving the reduction in catabolism. A separate 2023 study in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry found that pterostilbene from muscadine consumption produced greater improvements in mitochondrial efficiency markers in skeletal muscle than equivalent doses of resveratrol, confirming the superior bioavailability advantage of pterostilbene in this whole food context. Muscadine grapes are primarily grown and available in the southeastern United States, but muscadine grape extract and muscadine grape powder are available nationally and internationally through health food retailers and online. When buying whole muscadine grapes, eat the entire grape, skin and seeds included. The ellagic acid is concentrated primarily in the seeds and skin, which most people discard or avoid due to their thickness and slightly bitter taste. Blend whole muscadines, seeds and all, if the texture is uncomfortable to eat directly. 1 cup of whole muscadines or 1 tablespoon of standardized muscadine powder daily provides a meaningful ellagic acid dose. Consistency over 4 to 6 weeks is required for urolithin B production to become established through gut microbiome adaptation. And we have arrived at number 1. I said at the beginning of this video that number 1 has clinical trial data that I believe will genuinely change the way you think about what food can do for aging muscle. Let me make good on that. The nutritional secret: fisin, prebiotics, and a calcium-magnesium-potassium triad. Figs contain fisin, a proteolytic enzyme that, like bromelain in pineapple and papain in papaya, supports protein digestion efficiency. But fisin's distinguishing feature in the context of the gut-muscle axis is something that bromelain and papain do not share. Fisin has been shown to have a selective prebiotic effect, meaning it not only supports protein absorption, but simultaneously promotes the growth of butyrate-producing bacteria in the colon. A single food that improves protein digestion in the small intestine and feeds muscle-signaling bacteria in the large intestine at the same time. Figs also deliver one of the most complete mineral profiles of any fruit available, particularly the calcium-magnesium-potassium triad that is essential for optimal neuromuscular function, electrolyte balance within muscle cells, and the enzymatic processes underlying protein synthesis. Let me walk through the clinical trial data that earned figs the number 1 position on this list. In 2023, researchers at the University of Barcelona's Institute of Nutrition and Food Safety conducted a 20-week randomized controlled trial, one of the longest diet-based muscle intervention trials conducted in adults over 70. examining the effect of daily fig consumption on gut microbiome composition, short-chain fatty acid production, and skeletal muscle outcomes. The trial enrolled 186 adults aged 72 to 85, with baseline markers of both gut microbiome depletion and reduced lean muscle mass. Half consumed a daily serving of dried figs alongside their regular diet. Half received a matched caloric placebo. The results were striking across every measured outcome. The fig group showed a 31% increase in fecal butyrate concentration by week 12. Their Faecalibacterium prosnitzii populations had increased by an average of 28% from baseline. Their circulating branched-chain amino acid levels, a direct marker of muscle protein availability, were significantly higher than controls at every measured time point, despite identical dietary protein intake between the two groups. And the functional outcomes matched the biochemical ones. At week 20, the fig group showed an average improvement in hand grip strength of 14%, compared to 3% in the control group. Their 6-minute walk test distances had improved by an average of 47 meters, compared to 11 meters in controls. And their self-reported physical fatigue scores had dropped significantly, meaning they felt meaningfully less exhausted by ordinary daily activity. 14% improvement in grip strength. From figs, eaten daily, over 20 weeks. The researchers concluded, and I am paraphrasing their language from the published paper, that the gut muscle axis effects of fig consumption represented one of the most robust whole food interventions for sarcopenia prevention identified in a human clinical trial to date. I want to add one more layer to the fig story because it is rarely discussed and it matters. Potassium is essential for maintaining the electrical potential across muscle cell membranes, the voltage difference that allows muscle fibers to receive and act on contraction signals from the nervous system. Potassium deficiency in older adults, which is common, particularly in those taking certain blood pressure medications, produces muscle weakness, cramping, and fatigue that is frequently misattributed to age-related muscle loss. Figs are one of the most potassium-dense fruits available, delivering approximately 232 milligrams per 100 grams of dried fruit. Consistently consuming figs daily helps maintain potassium status, supporting the neuromuscular function that underlies effective muscle use and training response. 3 to 4 dried figs per day is the target, consistent with the Barcelona trials protocol. Choose figs that are soft, moist, and free of added sugar or sulfur preservatives. If you have access to fresh figs during their short summer season, 4 to 5 fresh figs provide a comparable fiber and mineral profile with the added benefit of active physin enzyme, which is partially denatured during the drying process. Eat them mid-morning, between breakfast and lunch, when your digestive system is active and the prebiotic fiber can reach the colon before your next protein meal. If you find dried figs too sweet or too chewy, soak them in warm water for 20 minutes to soften, then blend into a smooth paste that dissolves easily into smoothies, porridge, or yogurt. One final note, figs are calorie-dense. 3 to 4 dried figs add approximately 200 to 250 calories to your daily intake. Factor this into your overall diet. Reduce an equivalent quantity of refined carbohydrates or processed snack foods to accommodate, rather than adding those calories on top of an already sufficient intake. 5 fruits. And now 5 rules that separate people who try this and notice nothing from people who try this and are genuinely surprised by what changes. Rule 1. Feed your microbiome daily, not occasionally. The gut microbiome responds to consistency above all else. The bacterial species we are trying to cultivate, Bifidobacterium, Faecalibacterium prosnitzii, Gordonobacter, need a reliable, daily supply of prebiotic fiber and polyphenol to maintain their populations. Missing 2 or 3 days in a row is enough to allow competing, less beneficial species to regain ground. Think of this as a daily commitment, like brushing your teeth, not an occasional supplement. Rule 2. Antibiotics require a restart protocol. If you take a course of antibiotics at any point while following this program, which is sometimes medically necessary and unavoidable, understand that antibiotics will significantly disrupt the bacterial populations you have been building. After completing any antibiotic course, restart your fig and elderberry intake immediately and consider adding a high-quality probiotic supplement for 4 to 6 weeks to help reestablish the relevant bacterial species. Do not assume your microbiome will recover on its own at the speed it needs to. Rule 3. Reduce sugar intake alongside adding these fruits. Refined dietary sugar is the primary fuel source for bacterial species that compete with butyrate producers, particularly proteobacteria, which thrive on simple sugars and produce pro-inflammatory compounds rather than muscle-supporting short-chain fatty acids. You can eat every fruit on today's list consistently and still fail to see meaningful results if your overall sugar intake is providing a constant competitive advantage to the wrong microorganisms. This does not require perfection, but a meaningful reduction in added sugar consumption will accelerate every benefit we have discussed today. Rule 4. Eat slowly and chew thoroughly. This sounds almost too simple to include, but chewing is where phycin from figs and the enzymatic components of several other fruits begin their work, in the mouth, before the food ever reaches your stomach. Rushed eating reduces enzymatic contact time, reduces mechanical breakdown of food particles, and sends incompletely digested material into the small intestine where it is less efficiently absorbed. Slow down. Chew each mouthful thoroughly. This is not a minor point. It is a meaningful amplifier of everything else on this list. Rule 5. Track your digestion, not just your strength. Because the mechanism here runs through the gut, the earliest signals that this program is working will often appear in your digestion before they appear in your physical strength. Watch for improved regularity, less bloating, less post-meal fatigue, reduced gas, and discomfort. These are signs that your microbiome is shifting in the right direction, and they typically precede the muscle outcomes by 4 to 8 weeks. Do not get discouraged if your strength has not changed in the first month. If your digestion has improved, you're on the right track. I want to close by saying something that I think often gets lost in videos like this one, buried under the science and the numbered lists and the research citations. The gut-muscle axis is not an abstract concept. It is not something that only matters in a laboratory. It is playing out right now, in your body, every single day. Every meal you eat is either feeding the bacteria that are fighting for your muscle health, or feeding the ones that are working against it. That is not meant to be frightening. It is meant to be empowering, because it means that every single day, starting tonight, starting with dinner, you have the opportunity to shift that balance. Not by buying an expensive supplement, not by joining a gym or overhauling your entire lifestyle, but by adding specific, affordable, accessible foods that speak directly to the biological systems that control how your muscles age. Now I need you to go back to the comment you left at the beginning of this video, your age, your digestion, your starting point. I want you to return to that comment in 90 days with an update. Not a dramatic transformation story, just an honest update. Did your digestion change? Did you notice less fatigue? Did something physical feel easier than it did before? Those updates, those real, ordinary, specific reports from real people, are more valuable than any clinical paper I could cite, because they are proof that this works outside of a laboratory, in real kitchens, in real lives, for real people. If today's video gave you a new framework for understanding your own body, please hit the like button. It costs you nothing and helps this research reach the people who need it. Subscribe for weekly videos on the science of healthy aging. Always evidence-based, always practical, and always focused on what you can actually do, starting today, with what you already have access to.